As one of the most in-demand players in the jazz world today, what is it about Bruce Hornsby and the Camp Meeting project that got you interested?
I worked with Bruce for the first time in 1994, and at that time, it was very obvious that, he had these dynamic, these jazz, this undercurrent in all of his music. And I knew that at some point that he probably would do a jazz album. I didn't know it would be with Jack DeJohnette and myself, but I knew at some point he would probably, it only seemed logical that he would do a jazz project. When I got the call to record the CD with him and Jack, I was more than thrilled. So I was very curious to see those jazz chops flourish 100%.
You've no doubt played a few of these tunes before. How does this trio sound and approach differ from playing this great music in other contexts?
I think Bruce did a very good job in being able to kind of simultaneously approach these standards with the jazz, with the tradition in mind and the integrity that the music demands, but yet and still he was very much able to keep his Bruce Hornsby sound. I think fans who know Hornsby's hits, they're going to still hear this CD and still recognize his style of playing. So I think that's what makes this CD most different than any others that Jack and I probably both have played on.
Had you heard much of Bruce's music before this project?
Yeah, well, like I said, I had a chance to work with Bruce back in 1994, and at that time, we played a couple of his hits, and then we threw in My Foolish Heart. So I, like most other people, knew all of his big hits, The Way It Is, and Talk of the Town, and things like that. So it's a treat to get to work with him again.
Being a player who embraces and performs in many different stylistic situations, from straight-ahead jazz to funk, R&B, and fusion, how does one develop one's own sound while still being true to the music at hand?
I think being true to yourself as an individual, just as a human being, that kind of comes through in the music. I think if you don't really make a conscious effort to try to find your voice, because you already have it. What you're doing is developing your own voice, you're not finding it. I think once you realize that and you're able to kind of just keep working and playing and working and really finding what you're most comfortable with, your true voice develops. I don't really think anyone actually has had to really go and look for it. And I think all of the great innovators of this music realize that, and they just kind of just tried to strengthen what they already had. And then, blam, something happens out of the clear blue sky that was just kind of brewing there in the first place.
What do you hear in Bruce Hornsby's piano style that makes him unique to your ears?
Hold on one second. I'm sorry, I'm about to lose this.
Yeah, that's cool.
Go ahead.
I think with most musicians, particularly in the jazz world, you find they're influenced a lot by classical, classic pop, or even modern pop or rhythm and blues and soul music. You rarely find a lot of jazz musicians who come from bluegrass, like Bruce Hornsby. So to find a guy who's probably his top three styles that he kind of comes from and has absorbed in his lifetime, you got jazz, you got classical, and bluegrass. That's a pretty rare combination. And I think he's able to maintain that bluegrass background of his. Particularly here, a song like Stack Mary Possum is certainly a jazz song, but underneath it all, it's got that, Appalachian hillbilly funk happening. So Bruce has always had that underneath all of his music.
Jack DeJohnette said playing with a bassist is like playing with your best friend. Tell us about playing with a master like Jack DeJohnette.
Well, I hope he was considering me one of his best friends when he said that. I love playing with Jack DeJohnette. I've had a chance to play with him now a number of times, and it's always exciting. And that's something that's one of those raw emotions that I think a lot of musicians tend to lose sight of when you're playing with a guy like Jack. Of course, musically it's going to be gratifying, but just on an emotional level, it's a whole lot of fun. He plays with a lot of fire, a lot of sparks, and you know, he just keeps you smiling and keeps your eyes open. You know what I mean, just from amazement. And it's always a treat to play with him. And he's very right. Playing with, you know, the drummer and the bass player, you know, we have to be best friends to make it work.
How has this trio's music changed since your first rehearsals together?
All right. Well, as the shows develop, you know, we were in the studio for, I guess, maybe a week and a half or something like that, and then we played 2 shows up to this point. I think it's been somewhat of a slow progression because there's been so much space in between the recording and our first concert together. But I think by the time we actually do a string of concerts, it's really going to be something by then. I mean, it already feels very good now, but certainly by the end of our run together, it's going to be really popping.
You have a favorite song on the record that you recorded?
A favorite song on the CD? I don't think I have a particular favorite. The title track was really good, Camp Meeting. The Ornette tune, Questions and Answers. Wow, and Bruce's take on Giant Steps. Just to hear Bruce Hornsby play Giant Steps, that in of itself was enough of an eyebrow raiser for me and Jack, that I think it'll do the same for all of the listeners.
We're good.